Welcome to the Art of Quantum Healing, where we speak about trauma, mental health and healing. I am your host, Lisa Nadler, and I'm thrilled to have you come into my energetic field. In this podcast, I will be sharing my own personal experiences to guide, teach, and help pave the way. We'll also be welcoming so many other divine souls who have overcome trauma and found happiness, health, wealth, and next level abundance through mind, body, and soul connection. My mission is to help women high vibe and thrive with inner peace, passion, and purpose.
So welcome to another episode of the Art of Quantum Healing. And we've already been in hysterics and fits of laughter. I have the beautiful Victoria, all the way from the divine Sunshine Coast, joining me today. And we're going to go deep on addiction and sobriety, which is really exciting. And I'll just, before I introduce and say hello to Victoria, I will just read her bio, just so you can get a beautiful understanding for the divine creature and where she's come from, where she's going, and where she's been. So Victoria is a British-born mum that lives on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, one of my favourite places in the world, by the way. I will actually end up living there again. She has 3 naughty children, a very patient husband, and a confused dog. I love that line. She has been writing about her sobriety for 3 years. She's also the host of a popular podcast, Sobriety Awkward, and is currently working on her first book, yay, about breaking free from being a hungover parent. You can follow her zigzaggy journey on her blog, and all the information for her below. So welcome, Victoria.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. It's so good to have you.
Yeah, the podcast is Sober Awkward, not Sobriety Awkward.
Sober Awkward.
If you're searching on iTunes or Spotify, yes, Sober Awkward.
Sober
all
Awkward.
About 2 mums living in a booze-drenched world.
Oh, there's about 2 of you, not just one.
Yes, it's me and my mate Lucy. Lucy is the owner of Beanstalk Single Mums. She runs a network for single mums, and she just cracks me up. And it's just us kind of shooting the shit, everything sobriety. So it's usually me just giggling in the background at everything she says, but it's just a really good laugh. And it's us just being honest and open about what it's like to be women in this newfound sober world. Yeah.
And you got to humanize it, right? Take it right back to what it is. And if you're not having fun, what else are you doing? That's what I say.
Exactly. And there's a lot of airing of our dirty laundry in public, which we've both got a bit used to now. We still get the podcast horrors, which is when we drive home going, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. But at least we have each other to kind of bounce off afterwards and go, what you said was actually all right. And they're actually the funny bits. So,
they are.
So yeah. But it's a great podcast for anyone who's starting out on an alcohol-free journey and thinking and just questioning their relationship with alcohol. It's just all encompassing for anyone who's ever woken up with a hangover, really, and said, right, I'm not sure what's going on here. So, that's what we're all about.
Am I going to really fuck up another Sunday with it being like this? Like, seriously?
Yeah.
I think that's where I got to. I was like, how many more Sundays are you going to give up to this alcohol? Really?
Well, my book's called 1,000 Wasted Sundays.
Oh!
So there you go. You've hit the nail on the head.
Oh, it's so true, isn't it? It's like, and I love it when you get up in the morning and you're like, I am never doing this again. I've wasted another day. What am I thinking? And what happens next weekend? Whee!
Same thing, yeah.
Same thing.
No, it's terrible.
But I tell you what, I must admit that when I was in the drugs and alcohol, I had a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of fun until it wasn't fun. And that's when it sort of got a bit different, got serious.
Yeah, and changed. Yeah, relationships change, don't they?
Yeah, I reckon.
And also you mature and you start to realize that actually perhaps that wasn't the best thing to be doing, running down the high street in my underwear after threatening a police officer.
Was he cute?
Can't remember.
In my drunken eyes he was. Aren't they all?
Yeah, aren't they all? Exactly. With the beer goggles on.
So Victoria, I'd love you just to tell the audience a little bit about your story and how you got to be in that space.
Yeah, so my website is drunkmummysobermummy.com, and that really does sort of tell you a little bit about my story. So I grew up in a family in England that was a party family. you would have wanted to know them. They were the life and soul. My mum and dad had people around all the time. And I grew up wanting to join the party very, very early on. I saw that drinking as a way of being accepted in my family, and a way how I was going to show, that I was good enough. So from a very young age, drinking was viewed to me in a positive light. I thought, wow, that's how people relax. That's how people have fun. And I want in. So from a very young age, I watched my brother and sister, my elder sister as well. I watched them rebel and grow and start drinking before me. And all I wanted to do was join the party. So when I was young, I started to steal alcohol. I mean, I'm talking about 12. By the time I started drinking, I started to steal alcohol out of the garage, sneak it down the park, drink a bottle of wine with my friend. And I remember feeling a sense of euphoria then, and a sense that I was being welcomed into the world, and that this was what my life was going to be like now, and feeling a sense of relief that I could now be the grown-up that I always strive to be, and to be accepted by my family. So it's funny how that was instilled in me. My spongy little child brain was soaking up love in a way that I wanted to be accepted, and that's how people would love me. So therefore I became that person. I became the entertainer. I became the one with the jokes, the drugs, with the the extra bottle of wine. I brought the party with me everywhere I went. And that just developed as I got older. You would never have picked me out of the crowd and said, gosh, she's got a drink problem. You would have gone, gosh, I want to go out with her. She's a great laugh. So it was very clever, my drinking throughout my life. It was sort of absorbed by the crowd and soaked up with everyone I surrounded myself with. Everybody I knew were big drinkers. So when I was a teenager, it just escalated. Of course, there's social anxiety that comes with becoming a teenager and meeting boys. And I wasn't very confident in those areas. And I found that after a bottle of wine or after necking beers at the park, I could chat to boys, and I could, I was more accessible. My underwear was more accessible, but I was more accessible. It's terrible to say, but it's true.
It just made me
come out of myself. And I was like, here I am now. Like when I'd been hiding behind, the bar stool all night before. Now I was like, here I am. I can talk, I can chat, I can be fun. And it gave me a sense of confidence. When I was about 14, 15 years old, something happened that I realized now after getting therapy in my 40s, was that I was bullied a little bit, not in a physical way, but I had two best friends, and one day I turned up at school and they walked away from me in the other direction, and I never spoke to them again. And for me, it was devastating. It was absolutely heartbreaking that the two people I loved more than anything in the world had walked away from me without any sort of explanation. And I didn't. So there, in that moment there, I think a little sort of hole opened in my heart. And I didn't know how to fill it. I didn't know how to get the same level of love that I felt for them from anyone else. So I started to go on a kind of spiral from that point. My drug taking, I was smoking weed that was leading to taking acid, that was leading to taking ecstasy. This is like going year by year by year. Everything was escalating because that hole, that void that I was trying to fill was getting bigger and bigger. And the more I filled it, the larger it got. And it took me a long time to realize like why I was doing that. But now, of course, I realized that actually I was just trying to make people stay. I was trying to entertain people, be a good friend, be a loyal friend, because I was scared of people abandoning me like those girls had done. So it became my role was to be the entertainer, as I said, and just make sure everybody was having a good time, because if they weren't, I had a fear of them leaving. So it was a lot of responsibility, I realize now, to take on as a young girl, that to make everybody laugh and to make everybody happy. I mean, I still do it now to a certain degree, but I do it now in a way to get forward an interesting message. But then I was abandoning myself. I didn't realize I was letting loose at weekends and thinking that my behavior was normal, whereas in fact I was completely out of control. So it just excelled. There was a drink driving incident. I went off traveling. There was also a case where my parents wanted me to do a marketing degree and wanted me to do this and that, and I just wanted to do art. I was creative and I was being pushed towards things I didn't fulfill me. So I was rebelling against a lot of things, things that didn't make me happy. And in the end, it resulted in me leaving England and going traveling and not coming home for 10 years. And traveling was a really good way of me hiding the drink again, because I could party every night. I could move around. I could make different friends. I ended up blowing one of my fingers off with a firework on the Millennium night, the Millennium stump, because I'd been drinking too much. I was playing with fireworks. I was stupid. I was completely crazy, but people liked me. So it was like, it was pushing me to be more crazy. Yeah, it was totally my identity.
Yeah,
this crazy traveling girl that had no roots and lived out of a bag and had this, interesting life. I always wanted to be interesting and sort of this mysterious character that went from country to country. And actually, I was just going to country and drinking. Yeah. I even came to Australia and didn't see the Opera House when I lived in Sydney for a year, because I was too busy getting what do they call it? Like a whole box of beers that morning for all my flatmates, so that we could all sit around and do what I thought was the right thing, which was just a party. Yeah, so I traveled. There was a tsunami in there, which I managed to avoid. My house got destroyed. There was probably some trauma there that I had to deal with, because I had to go and try and find my boyfriend of the time in the aftermath. So I saw a lot of death, and I saw a lot of trauma, and I saw a country change, which was a fascinating experience, but also a very traumatic one, I think.
Where were you?
I was in Thailand. I was living in Thailand at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a bar. Obviously, I had bars all over Thailand for that period, and I had a Thai boyfriend, and we ran bars, and all of that got destroyed, and he ran inland with the wave at his feet. And I was in Australia for a holiday. I left the day before the tsunami to visit some family. Oh, wow. And I missed it by 24 hours, but I flew back into the disaster zone. Wow. Yeah. And I just put it aside. I remember the bar was gone. We found a bottle of vodka planted in the sand and sat on the beach. And got a few in and numbed out. It's my habit of numbing out, the reality of things instead of facing them. There was a pattern that was continuing throughout my life. So it just continued until I got to Australia. I left the boyfriend, I left Thailand, and I decided I never wanted after a disastrous relationship with an American. My drinking, of course, led to a lot of promiscuity, which led to me abandoning myself in those situations. And what it came down to, Lisa, was that I didn't realize that any of these situations that I mattered. I was such a people pleaser by this point that I'd forgot that what actions I took were going to have repercussions throughout my life. Yeah. And actually, I was just, everything I did was for other people. Oh, if he likes me, I'll sleep with him. It was as simple as that in my brain. Oh, that's nice of him to like me. Therefore, I'm going to allow him to fornicate with me, which is how my brain worked. It was like I was getting hits of adrenaline, hits from the drink, hits from a one night stand. And all of it left me feeling really horrible about myself, lying in bed with sheets up to my chin going, why do they leave? What, aren't I good enough? And those feelings just kind of tapped me on the shoulder all of the time. But of course, I drank them away. So I just pushed them off. Yeah. So luckily, when I moved to Australia,
familiar, isn't it? The other way is familiar, and you grew up in that stage. So you grew up drinking, and then you formed this identity of who you thought you needed to be to belong and to fit in, because our primary fear is not belonging. And abandonment is one of the biggest things that we can actually go through, because if we don't belong, then all our survival instincts and everything are gone. So we're constantly wanting to fit in, which is why we change so much when we're little. So you were programmed at a very little age. It was impossible. It was impossible for me to see out of it. Because I was so in it. I was so ingrained in me from such a young age that I couldn't, I hated sober people. If anyone that was sober was near me, it was like I felt like I was disgusted by them, probably because I didn't want them to remember what I'd been doing, probably mostly. And I was like, I do not want that. Yeah, I don't want that person near me because they've seen me rolling around on some dance floor somewhere. But I was repulsed by something. Can you imagine, Victor, if there were cameras and people were filming what they do on social media now? I think in my days, and I'm like, thank God that was not around.
I know, God. I think I probably would have given up drinking actually a lot earlier than I did, because it'd just be like, what is that mess?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I moved to Australia eventually and decided that I sat on a beach one day and thought, gosh, what am I doing? I want to find a husband. I want to have children. That was one of the things I've always wanted, but my life was so out of control that I couldn't almost imagine having it. Anyway, I was 33 then.
33.
Yeah, so it's about 11 years ago that I kind of had this feeling that I needed a change, all the craziness, and I needed something more stable. I definitely felt that. I hooked up with a guy I'd met at university when I was 18. And we were engaged within 6 weeks of meeting. And actually, it was the first person I felt like had liked me for me. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I could drop the act and I could not drink, and it was okay. I mean, we still drank together because that's just, I didn't know another way of socializing. But there was something different. Yeah, he was allowing me to be myself, and I didn't feel any pressure to act out in any way. I was pregnant very quickly. I was 3 months pregnant at our wedding, and that was my first sober social event, was my actual wedding.
So
I know, at 34 years old.
Wow.
I'd never been out because I thought, what's the point? No, why would anyone want to go out without drinking? I just couldn't comprehend it. It just
you didn't know how to be, did you? You weren't comfortable. I just didn't. Yeah.
So really, that's like me not being comfortable with myself with that alcohol. I was scared of that sort of level of authenticity, I guess.
Yeah.
So my drinking continued after 6 weeks after the baby was born. I went out on a big bender. You know, motherhood, we don't talk about this very much, but there is a transition from party girl to motherhood, which is a really difficult, dark place to be, because there was so much pressure on me all of a sudden. The only thing I knew was to drink, but I couldn't drink because I was breastfeeding. And it just built up. I felt so isolated. I had so much responsibility. I was just this mad traveling girl. And then all of a sudden I've got this life that I had to look after. And it was very, very overwhelming.
180, isn't it?
Yeah. And the only thing I knew how to do, of course, was to go out and get wasted.
And the other thing is that you didn't really have a real mother figure around you growing up, because it was always an alcohol, and you didn't know how to mother yourself. I always say that we need to know how to mother ourselves so that we can then pass it on. So it was like, that would have been so frightening.
I guess I just didn't know what. Still then, I never questioned the alcohol. I thought, that is my way. That is my reward. It's mother's milk. You know, this is my reward for me doing this. You know, I love this baby, but I still want to be an independent woman. I still want to go out with my friends. And I was determined, you know, even though the lives were obviously colliding, I was determined to be the party girl and the mum. So I'd be great during the week. I had the right wraps, the right, you know, cloths and all the, you know, paleo snacks and all that rubbish. But then at the weekend, I wanted to let my hair down and be like a mad loony with a traffic cone on my head. You know, I wanted to be that crazy girl again. And that's what I did. And it continued. And so, but the one thing that happened after the baby was something sort of infiltrated my life, which was anxiety, shame, and guilt. So when I had a baby crying in the room beyond my hangover, I had to self-reflect for the first time ever and go, what the bloody hell am I doing? Like, I'm going out and now I'm incapable of looking after my child. The only thing I'm capable of is running to the toilet and vomiting up kebab and the Chardonnays that I had last night. And I was a mess. Those hangovers were so bad. I drank so much more than anyone else because I couldn't control it. Even when I tried moderation, I realized that was a fallacy. And so I just kept repeating these patterns, and the more guilt I felt, the more shame I felt, and then the more I repeated it, and it was just like this vicious circle. And then I got pregnant again. I had a 9-month window of sobriety, which I loved, and I promised myself to do better. 6 weeks after the baby was born, I went out and got hugely pissed because it was just too much, a little baby and a 4-year-old and all of this stuff going on. And that next morning, I woke up with the worst hangover ever, and I knew that I'd had enough. So there was that period in between, I call it my Pinot Gris purgatory, where I got stuck. I was so stuck because I didn't know that I had to stop drinking. All I knew was I need to continue drinking, even though it's giving me anxiety, but I still want to be a mum. And I got really, really stuck in that place.
It's like you're in two worlds. You're in this world, and there's this timeline running in the middle, and you're like, how do I get on the one that is the balance and the grounding when you want to be both? Confusing.
So confusing. And yeah, I just remember plodding out into the lounge and saying to my husband, look, I can't do this anymore. I've had enough. I can't live with this anxiety. I can't. He's a drinker, but he'd have one beer when I would have 4. I'm a glugger, I'm the one that's pouring it down my neck with my hand out for the next glass. Yeah. I'm checking the line where the barman has he filled it up enough? Taking sips out of people's glasses on my way back from the bar. Yeah. I'm not your typical alcoholic. I'm your typical party girl.
I was a pig.
Yeah.
For me, I was a pig. I was always looking for the next. I was always trying to negotiate and navigate who I could connect with that would give me the next line or the next drink. And I was an alcohol rep. So you can imagine, and I was going out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I was like, I had it on tap, but I was always like, I was the manipulator. I was one that planted the seed on, let's do another one. Oh, no, better not. Do that. Oh, you better not. So that it's their choice. So that I used to feel bad. I was definitely the one that was trying to navigate when I was going to get the next hit. Definitely, 100%.
It's clever how you manipulate those situations to make it more fun. Because you want people on your same wavelength.
Yes.
But actually, really, we're saying, I want you on the same wavelength. But actually what it is I want everybody to be as fucked up as me so that nobody notices how mental I am.
Yep. And I can just keep feeding my addiction and keep hiding over in the corner and being who you want me to be, because this is who I am when I'm fun. I'm fucked up. Yeah. I can be fun now. Yeah.
Classic behavior. I mean, I say party girl, but I now refer to it more as an addict with backstage passes. I was like a groupie that was really unwell.
Who am I going to hang out with today? Who's going to be the most fun? Absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So at that point, I reached out and got professional support because I realized I was failing at moderation and that I couldn't sort this problem out on my own. And I had therapy and I stopped drinking, and now I'm nearly 4 years sober. And I started writing, I started writing a diary when I gave up drinking, and it became my book. And now I've got a website where I support women, and a Facebook page where I support women that are questioning their relationship with alcohol, and the podcast and everything, just because I love talking about it, because I feel like I don't talk about an extreme form of drinking. I talk about a very gray area, a very middle ground where people don't reach out for support because they don't feel like their problem is bad enough. But if alcohol is affecting your life in a negative way, then you are deserving of help. And it's about understanding that you're worthy. That's really my message most of the time, is saying no matter where you are on this vast spectrum of problem drinking, you are worthy of reaching out for professional support, and there are people that can help you. Since I've given up, I've just become like this kind of advocate for grey area binge drinkers, I guess.
Because when you're in it, like when I was in it, was like I didn't know what steps to get out of it, so it was just more comfortable to stay in it because it was the familiar, it was the known. It was like, oh, well, this is comfortable, I'm fun, I'm having fun, the next day's not bad, but I can get through that day, what I mean? So it's really.
What did you do?
I was alcohol, and I was mostly speed, cocaine, ecstasy. Oh, what did I do when I came off it, you mean? Or what?
How did you? I can imagine. I can only imagine. Probably the same ones as me.
I started very late in life with my addictions, but my addictions before that, because I believe you always got different addictions depending on what it is, switch from one to the other. And so my addiction was. Before that was food. I was loved food. It was my thing. And then I went to alcohol. And then when I moved over to Australia, I'd never done drugs before. And I'd had a space of about 5 years where I made up for it. I went fucking hard. I was everything, always partying, but doing it. And then it went from weekend to during the week. And I ended up in hospital. And and I knew that I was, if I didn't change, I was dead. I had a couple of suicides. Same thing. I started having massive panic attacks and anxiety. And I couldn't even do my job. Had to make sure that when I went in, because I was a rep, I had to make sure when I went into the offices to do my orders with the alcohol, I had to make sure I knew where the door was, and my back was against the wall, because I had that massive fear of I was just so petrified. And then I found Valium, and then that became my drug. So I sort of transitioned off, and then Valium, I didn't leave the house for about 6 weeks. And then I started Valium, and that was it. I was a functioning alcoholic for a very long time. Very long time. Yeah.
Wow. Everybody's got a story with it, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, and everyone's got some degree of a certain addiction. I mean, whether it's, you're right, it all comes down to worthiness. If you think that, and also for me, I think it really is, and you touched on this earlier on when you were like, you became this person, this identity, and we fit that mold of that, and we lose contact with who we are, and we lose contact with the essence of who we are. We just go and be who we think that people want us to be and need to be, and what we're programmed. So we completely lose who we are. And then as we start touching in, we realize, actually, we are pretty fucking cool without alcohol. We are still funny. We are still neat to be around, but it's a whole connection, worthiness, self-love sort of thing. So it's a bit of a hindrance, really.
But it's very hard as well with alcohol. It's not like the other drugs, is it? It's like society, culture, socials, everything is pushing us towards the drink. Everything is, it's almost like part of the human condition is that we have trauma, we have anxiety, we have all of these problems, and alcohol is the answer to those until it becomes a problem. So you're like creating alcoholics everywhere in the world and making people think it's okay. So it's like this normalization of something that is actually really, really bad for us and takes away our authentic self and takes away who we are as people, exactly what you say. So it's a really big battle to take on, to talk about, because there's one side of your drinking where you're just like, yes, this is me, I'm fun, I drink, this is who I am. And then there's a hypocrite like me who used to drink, which I am, I totally admit it, who used to hate sober people and now has become what I hated. Yes. And I can see it for what it is. I can see the trickery that, the news stories telling you that, I think it's on tonight on I can't remember, the Australian dramatic news program, is something about how one beer a day is good for you. Like no amount of alcohol is good for you.
Programming, right? And you know that when I used to watch TV, and the programs I really enjoyed were programs like, that they would sit and they'd be social, and they'd always have a glass of wine in their hands. They'd always been opening beer. And so, of course, that's how deep the programming is. Oh, well, it's okay, because if they're doing it, then why isn't it okay for me to do it? Like, I don't understand. And especially in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm not too sure of other countries, everything is built around alcohol. We built everything around, and everything is a social occasion. And Dad, always had a beer, and Mum always had a glass of wine. And like you say, that's the programming you are. So how can it be wrong if your parents did it?
Yeah.
So, as you say,
and that message,
yeah,
so true. Like that messaging, like that we're passing on when we continue that cycle is, for my children, I realized now and then when I had that real epiphany moment, I realized that my messaging to them was completely toxic. It was me saying these rewards is like mummy saying, sorry, darling, you're too hard work. So therefore I need to numb out and have a glass of wine because I can't cope with you. Yeah. So all I'm doing is pushing them down and saying, this drink is more important than you. This me relaxing now and getting rid of my stress is more important than my relationship with you. And I realized that now. I was doing that all the time. I was prioritizing alcohol. It was my preoccupation. I was thinking about that rather than thinking about them. And now to let go of that preoccupation, like where's the next drink coming from? When am I going out next? All of those things. It's like a huge sobriety is like a huge booze weight that is lifted from your chest. And you just go, I don't even need to think about it anymore. And I can just be naturally who I was supposed to be. I still have a few people pleasing issues. I'm still a bit mad here
We've
and there.
Still got to work on things, love, or it wouldn't be fucking fun.
Exactly. I've still got to evolve in some way. Otherwise, I'd be sitting in that temple in Tibet, wouldn't I? On top of my hill.
We spoke about.
So I truly believe that people can evolve. And I think some people, if they're listening to this and struggling with drinking, you can evolve, you can change. There are people out there to help you, and you don't have to be stuck in this rut. You're worthy of professional support. It's a really important message, I think.
I absolutely agree. And so what are some of the things that you did to break free? Is there any things that you actually did that, like for me, I would still have the wine glass when I first started giving up alcohol. It took a few times, and I would have soda in that wine glass because that made me feel like I was social. For me, it was quite a mental thing, and actually being I didn't like you. I didn't feel like I belonged if I didn't have a drink in my hand, because, you know, everybody else had a drink in their hand. Was there some things that you actually did that you could give a little bit of tips to people?
Well, in the beginning, I'll be honest and say for the first 18 months, I didn't tell anybody because I was so scared about people's reactions.
Wow.
Because it was just who I was. So it was like a mirror for people. I didn't want to be too confronting, you know, and people would think that you're judging them. If I don't drink, it's like as soon as you say I don't drink, they feel judged about their own drinking. So it's very confronting for people when someone doesn't drink, and people don't like it that much. They don't, you know, some people are understanding and some people aren't, and that took me a while to comprehend. And for 18 months I stood with a beer in my hand and pretended that I was still drinking because I wasn't confident enough, and I hadn't identified myself then. I didn't know what I was because I didn't feel like an alcoholic, and I didn't feel like somebody who didn't have a problem with alcohol. I definitely felt that I did. And then one day I was at the library and somebody handed me a book called Sober Curious by a lady called Ruby Warrington. And for the first time, I was able to identify what I was. I was a sober, curious woman. And that is exactly, and suddenly I found a community of people out there. You know, I didn't know that there were people like me, people that, you know, you imagine the word alcoholic, your brain jumps directly to someone passed out on a park bench with a bottle of Jack Daniels. And I knew I wasn't that, but I knew I was something. I knew I had a problem, and I knew that alcohol was having a negative effect on my life. So as soon as I found that, I Googled it, and then I found Instagram communities, I found Facebook communities, I found groups, I found this whole massive community. And that was a really good tip, actually, if you're considering going alcohol free, is make a separate Instagram account and follow all the sober accounts, because that is a huge support. There's a massive millions of people out there who all they do is post about sobriety, about day one, about day two, about a quote about this. It is just a fascinating thing. Whenever you're feeling like a bit wobbly, you can just go on there and go, here's my people, here's the advice. I run a Facebook page called Drunk Mummy, Sober Mummy, the group. And that's for women, not just mums. There's like 2,000 women on there, and everybody shares their sober stories. If they're having a shit day, you know, the internet is a bit shit.
It happens. Shit days happen. I mean, far out. And they're the ones that you've got to navigate through. Having support is so key.
And having people that have been there exactly where you've been is just such a huge help. I mean, some people, we always say the internet, like we hate like the way that, you know, pouting selfies and all of that rubbish. But there are some good things about the internet. You've got help 24/7 at your fingertips, which can be an amazing support. So that's been huge. That's been a huge help for me. And one of the things in the end was I had to be honest with people after that 18 months and say, look, you know, there was a stage where I was saying I'm a designated driver, or I'm on antibiotics, or just because I couldn't be bothered with the
have a drink.
Well, go on, just have one, blah blah blah. Then I was sort of saying, well, I have a drink problem, which just made them look scared and want to run away. And now I either say F off, or because it's none of your bloody business what I put into my body, because it isn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of course it isn't. Nobody should ask you why you drink or not drink.
Your choice. Yeah.
But now I just say I'm sober, or I'm sober curious, because there's the story. Work out the rest for yourself.
You're sober curious. I really love it. It's a really nice way of putting it. I mean,
it's a softening turn. It softens it, and it encompasses so many more people. It's like a big bear hug saying it's okay. You can be curious. You can question your alcohol. That's what it's about. If you're questioning, then you are a sober, curious person.
I think it also asks for support. That word curious. You know, you're asking for support.
Yes,
and that's what I always say when you're coming out of anything, and when you've got emotions coming up, or you've got feelings, you've got something that's been presented to you, and you're not too sure how to navigate with it or what it is. Just be curious about it. There is so much power in curiosity. You don't necessarily need to know what's happening, as long as you can just look, observe, and be curious. It's huge. It's so big.
Yeah.
Oh, what a fascinating story.
Well, it's interesting because there's no extremes in it, which is what makes it relatable. Is that I'm not talking about what we said. I'm talking about a problem that was very, very normal. I actually like to refer to myself as a socially acceptable alcoholic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my drinking was cheered on by the sidelines, you know. There was fireworks going off if I did another shot. It was all like, yeah, let's drink. Drinking's brilliant. This is the best.
Yeah.
Everyone was applauding me for it, which is how it goes in society. But actually, we're applauding somebody who is breaking in front of you. You know?
So you're the entertainment. So they're actually hiring you as some sort of entertainment, and they're filling you with the alcohol to your detriment. Holy shit. But then
everyone else had a good night.
You grew up like it, like you watched your environment. See, I didn't grow up as much with it, but I did grow up with an alcoholic mother. And I did grow up, actually I grew up with an alcoholic grandfather as well, who used to so I for me it was more so I had alcohol in my blood. It was in my DNA, it's in my cells, it's in my, you know, generations that it was acceptable, even though it was quite violent. Although my mum wasn't violent. So it wasn't a social thing like it was for you, but it's really interesting hearing, you know, how you've actually come up through and where you are now. And what would be one bit of advice that you would give people that are sitting in a space going, oh God, I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to turn. I mean, and you've just shared, you know, to reach out and get on the different groups and everything, but taking that first step to taking ownership for what is actually going on with them.
Well, I think it's just admitting just admitting to yourself and not to anybody else that alcohol isn't working anymore. It's not your mate. Like, is alcohol really your best mate still? And really question that. Those questions are going to be coming anyway, you know, fast and hard on a Sunday morning when you're lying in bed with that thumping headache. You're going to be asking yourself those questions anyway. And I think it's time to answer them. You know, answer those questions. Why do you feel like this? And the reason is because you're over drinking. And therefore you're failing at moderation. And moderation really is a true myth. You know, moderation for me, failing at it made me feel worse. So I felt shame because I couldn't moderate and I couldn't understand. And moderation, you will never get the benefits of sobriety if you continue to fail at moderation. It's just going to put a downer on everything.
I never thought of that. It's true, because oh God, I can't even do it moderately. You know, yeah.
They were the nights I'd get the most wasted when I was attempting moderation, because I'd rebel against it because I've got a rebellious nature. I'd be like, oh yeah, I've had one. Oh, let's get the bottle. It was as simple as that.
Rebel.
Yeah, because I'm a rebel. So I was like, yeah, that was boring. Now let's all get wasted. Yeah.
It's like when you went 9 months with no alcohol after your kid, you're like, wow, let's do this.
Yeah, let's get on it. Let's get on it. Like a car bonnet. Oh, it's terrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's all about, like, for me, like the best advice I would get, for me, it was about becoming a mother that allowed me to see that I wanted to change. So that was really, if you're a mum, you can either carry on this behavior and keep sending those messages to your children, or you can change. And you can change that legacy. Like what I'm doing is I hopefully, like, call me in when they're 18. They're only 2, 5 and 9 at the moment. But when they're 18 and I'm bailing them out of some jail somewhere, but we'll see how I go. But I'm hoping that my changes will mean will ripple throughout my family for generations to come, and say, look, you don't have to drink to be the life and soul of the party. In fact, you don't even have to go to the party. You can actually just stay at home. Everyone's like, oh, not drinking, we can still be fun. You don't have to be fun. There's something to be said for that as well. And actually just sobriety is more about a sense of peace and about learning who you are and growing as a person and accepting yourself and becoming authentic. It's not about going, look at me, I can still be fun. I mean, I can still be fun, but when I want to be, most of the time, I don't want to be, and I just want to be at home having a bath or reading a book.
Isn't it amazing the amount of times and the amount of days that you wasted either being hungover or thinking about drinking or trying to navigate how you're going to get your drinks or navigating where you're going to go to have your fun and who you're going to be around, when really you could just zen out and be at home in the bath. Oh
God, I know. It's taken me far too long to realize that. I know, it's just chaos, all that other stuff. When I look back, I'm just like, oh God, it was so much bloody chaos when I could have just been enjoying myself and just been living my life. I do feel like I missed out on quite a lot, you know. I missed out on, I had a lot of horrible relationships, and I missed out on seeing the world. I went to amazing places and did some amazing things, and I do have some wonderful memories, but there are definitely some regrets there. But I didn't have the knowledge, and I had to suffer before I was able to understand the issue.
That's it. And it's funny because I think of when I went to different places, because I did it quite later on in life, like I was a little Kiwi girl, I didn't really do much. I went to traveling to places when I had the anxiety and panic attacks, and I couldn't do anything. I was going to these beautiful countries, but because the chemical imbalance in my head was so fucked up from all the speed, I couldn't actually enjoy where I was, because I was constantly worried I was going to have a panic attack or the anxiety, and I went to places and I would just do enough just to experience it. I just think of all the wonders that I missed out on, all the cloudy days that I could have actually been enjoying the event that I was at, instead of being
I could have been a functional human being. Like, I know. And now I'm like doing all this stuff, and like I realized my brain works. I started writing, I do pottery. I get up early and go for walks, and like I'm just normal. Whereas before I realized now, looking back, I wasn't acting in a normal way. I was like completely out of control.
You were you. Yeah,
I wasn't me. I was like a zombie. Whenever I look at photos, it's really interesting. My eyes are like, like shark eyes, like really dead eyes. Every photo, I mean, someone sent me a photo of me sort of hovering over a toilet, with bleached blonde hair. I was obviously on drugs, and I just looked at that picture. I actually got really upset, because I was like, there's no one home. There's no one home, and I'm just completely abandoned myself, and I'm just this toxic mess that's just throwing chaos out into the world.
And your soul has left your body because it can't handle to be in that space. And that's what, when I did my first soul retrieval, my soul just went whoosh into my body. It was like, about time you're showing up, because I don't want to deal with that sort of shit when you're in your 3D existence. Fascinating. So what's one bit of advice that you'd like to give everybody moving forward that's listening? Whatever flows through.
I just think maybe for me, finding out that I was enough was the biggest change that I could ever have made. Finding out that the expectations of others were irrelevant, and that things that I did to help others made me lose myself even more. And all of the people pleasing, I was making up what other people were thinking in their heads, that Brené Brown thing of me making up my own stories. I did that a lot. So learning that I was enough and that I mattered was the biggest step I've ever taken in my life. And I hope there's going to be a lot more steps like that. So I think like learning about yourself and focusing on what you want from your heart. I mean, if you were to lay out a really good way of doing it for me, this is exactly what I did. Actually, I wrote down all of the things from my past that I felt had not been right, the blowing my finger off, an arrest, all of these things that had happened. I wrote them down on a big long list. It was a little bit worse than Santa's naughty list, I can tell you. It was quite confronting. No one told me to do it, but I just thought, I'm going to do it to see what I think, like from an outsider's point of view, what would I have thought of that person? So that's a really good thing to do. And then I read it through, and then I wrote next to the words, not okay, under every single thing. Blowing your finger off, not okay. Getting arrested, not okay. All of these things. I realized all the things I've been doing my whole life were not okay, and that I was lost in those things, and I had never known that I was worthy. So finding out and realizing that through therapy and help and friendships, and my husband, who's just stood beside me the whole way, shoulder to shoulder, and never judged me, having those people in your life and being honest, it will lead you to evolve in that way. I'm not saying I'm fucking perfect. I'm mental sometimes. I really shout at my children. Perfection? Yeah, I know. I want to run down the drive and put my head in a drain most days, but like at least I'm conscious to witness my failures and my successes.
And you're and I'm me now, having this human experience, the soul having a human experience, and whatever that looks like is okay. But at least you're not numbing and using coping mechanisms and hiding and not knowing who you are. You're actually finding out who you are and your worthiness. I love that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's definitely been my journey for sure.
Hey, oh, how exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing this beautiful part of you. And I'm going to put your the Facebook page that you talked about so that people can come and they can get to, if they're sitting in the space of what's next, what do I do, where do I go, as well as your podcast. Sober awkward, yeah, not sobriety, so that people can connect with you, because a lot of people are sitting there and they're just like, well, I want to do something, I know something's not right, but what do I do, where do I go? So thank you so much for coming on and sharing the beautiful part of you and all the messiness. And I love the messiness. I think the messiness makes us who we are. And the journey that you've had and the wisdom that you now hold, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been absolutely lovely. Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you too. See you later. Bye guys.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Make sure to check out all the show notes of today's episode on my website by clicking on the link in the description. Also, make sure to join my newsletter to receive a free guided meditation to help you feel grounded throughout your day. Finally, make sure to subscribe to my channel and help us grow the community by sharing it with your friends. I am your host, Lisa Nadler, and this is the Art of Quantum Healing.